So I wanted to try something a little different, which is why you notice the backdrop behind me. That's what I'm talking about, a little different, not super exciting, instead of just my usual old bookshelves. So let me know what you think of it. If it's something that you're like, I don't know. I just feel like it's like I'm just having the same background. Like I just feel like I have to mix it up or it'll just get boring. But I also don't want to completely rearrange my shelves because that's like a lot of work. Yeah. It's been a while since I've done a video where I talked about writing, and so I thought I would do a video today where I talked a bit about world building, also known as why I am not continuing writing in the world of the Trylle, the canon, and the Omti. It's a question that I get a lot, and it's actually really tied into what I want to talk about with world building. So world building, if you're unfamiliar, is basically just what it sounds like. It's building the world that your book inhabits. And all books have some degree of world building. For some of them, if they're like a fictional contemporary book, there might be less world building, but you're still gonna have, you know, the characters' names, the families, the house. You know, you build up stuff around, even if it's based on real things, and you incorporate real things. With high fantasy novels, the world building is a lot more extensive. You know, like you're thinking like George R. R. Martin, Tolkien, where it's like completely like built from the ground up, and they have their own language and all of that. I think the Trylle Saga is classified as more of a low fantasy because it's not a completely different world. It takes place on our Earth with a lot of our rules, and it starts in the idea that humans and trolls live amongst each other, and it really incorporates our mythologies, you know, Nordic mythology and stuff that exists here. So it is very much based in our world, but there's still a lot of world building that went into it. When I first started writing the Trylle trilogy, I wasn't as into world building, I think, as I am now. And so some of the stuff in the Trylle stuff, I didn't spend as much time putting thought into it before I kind of wrote it. Like, I mean, I put thought into it. I don't think I was just like, meh. But as far as like the economy of the world and, you know, what the whole society looked like, and even what the other tribes look like, I only had really rough ideas of what I thought they were, and I didn't you know, spend that much time like really fleshing them out. And so when it came to the Canon Chronicles, I started doing more world building, and I think you can definitely see that in the book. There's a lot more that goes on, and it was partially necessary because Bryn had grown up in the world, and so she knew all the rules and the ins and outs, where Wendy would grow up with humans, so she didn't know all the stuff about troll society, so it wasn't absolutely necessary because she was a complete newcomer, you know. So I didn't need to do as much of that world building. It just wasn't how the story was going. And also Wendy, everything was new to Wendy, so every piece of information was so new that it was, I didn't want to do too much information overload, but also, again, I hadn't necessarily plotted it out in detail either. So with the Canon Chronicles, I really started building on that more and getting into it. And then the notes for the Canon Chronicles are like 3 or 4 times as long as my notes and outlines and all of that for the Trylle. I just really got into it. I really wanted to see the world and really, like, you know, go into it and go deeper. And that was also part of what really attracted me to the idea of the Omti origins, because I had started building on more things than that I could fit into the Canon Chronicles. I had really gotten into their history. I had sort of, I wrote like all, I know all the monarchies of all the tribes going back to the very beginning. Like I have it like really, I have an incredibly detailed history. I've got notes on the wars and all this stuff. I mean, like I could I've got enough information to like write a history book. But the thing is most people don't want to read history books. I mean, some people do. I like reading it at times, and I know that other people do, but especially if you're picking up, you know, a fantasy novel or, you know, an adventure romance, you're not like thinking about, you know, a history book. But the Omti origins, I think that, you know, it's a really good trilogy, and I love it, and I think that people are really enjoying it, and I have a habit of kind of knocking my own work, and so I'm about to do it again. So that's that whole preface there that I just can't like resist knocking my own stuff. But with the Omti origins, I think one of the complaints that I've had is that there is a lot of world building, and at times it slows the story down so much because I'm talking about so much. And the thing is like I think that is, you know, an absolutely fair criticism. But like there's so much stuff that I didn't put in there, and there was already so much stuff that I was cutting and thinking and trying to figure out where to put it in. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I'm not going to continue on with this series, is because I've gotten so enmeshed in the world that I think it's really easy for me to lose the plot and building the world, because I want to talk about it. I love writing it, and it's for me, it's so like just satisfying creating this world and putting all the pieces together and figuring out how they fit. And it has been just like a tremendously fun thing for me to do, and I love it. And so I think I would be too tempted with the 4 series to just really I don't know, just really turn it into something incredibly boring and hefty. And I don't want to do that. Like, I mean, I think that I've just spent so much time in this world that it's just, that's what's really, I want to like have like, you know, see boring board meetings and stuff like that. And I just don't think that's what people want. And also, you know, if you read if you've read the series, no spoilers, but I feel like the way it ends is kind of a conclusion too. And I mean, I wrote that I did that too. I debated on a lot of different things, but I wanted to, I did want to kind of close the door to myself so I wouldn't be tempted, because I feel like I love it. And I loved, you know, the language and building it and pulling in different stuff from real world and different mythologies and giving this really in-depth history and how it's built. And I went way too, and people have talked about how there is a little bit of a sci-fi bent in this book, and that's definitely also true, because I went into really building like how scientifically this could all work. Like I think I sometimes wonder if I overly ground my fantasy. I think that's like one of Tim Burton's problems with his newer films. I love Tim Burton. I love especially like his older stuff, but with his newer stuff, I feel like he over-explains the magic and it loses the magic. And I feel like that's a flaw I have with myself, which is why I like really don't like it in him, because you tend, like, there's that thing where you don't like, the thing you hate the most about other people is usually something that you hate the most about yourself, or something like that. I don't know if it's true. Whatever. Like, I didn't invent that saying, so I don't know. Anyway, though, so that's kind of where I'm at with the Empty Origins. I feel like if I were to do it again, I would take too much of the magic out. And because I feel like there's a lot of magic still in the Empty Origins, but I think that it didn't have exactly the same pull and magic of the Trylle trilogy, and I think it's because I got in my head a little bit too much, and I think I'm going to stay in my head too much with the series and the world building and what I would want to do. I think with my last few books, I think that is my issue, is that I've gotten kind of overly world buildy. And I do feel like there's been a bit of a disconnect with readers with some of my more recent books, like the Valkyrie duology and the Empty Origins. I mean, people are liking it, but it's not, it doesn't seem to be the same fervor as some of my other books. They're not, like, they're enjoying them, but it's not like as, I don't want to say rabid, but that's the word that I'm thinking of, is like, just like, and so I think that part of it is I've gotten too world building, and I've pulled away from the plot. And so I've written some books this past year that I've kind of talked about a little bit, and I didn't really allow myself to do much world building beforehand. I kind of made myself go in and make the plot build the world, as opposed to the world build the plot. And I think that's where I've gotten hung up in the last couple books, is I have the world building the plot and not the plot building the world. I mean, the plot needs to just drive the whole thing, you know what I mean? And I mean, the characters in the plot really need to drive the whole thing, but it shouldn't be the world, you know? I mean, I think that there's definitely going to be exceptions to that rule. I'm sure that some authors have definitely done that to an amazing degree. I would say there's a lot of high fantasy that really does do that to like a really good degree. So I'm just saying that, like, that's not something that I think I'm doing well. And for every writer's rule too, like, I think whenever any writer, whether it's me or anyone else, gives you advice, it's always very grain of salt. Every writer is different, and even you know, great writers have entirely different writing styles, writing opinions, and so everything I say like, this works for me, kind of, maybe, but I'm also constantly changing stuff up, and I'm constantly trying to develop and grow and figure out, you know, what my voice is, I guess. I mean, I feel like I found my voice, but I also feel like I'm still finding it, because, you know, no one's static. Nothing's static. So I don't know if anything I've said has been helpful or informative. I hope so. I hope that you are doing well, and thank you for watching, and yeah, thanks.